I've had this great idea my entire life, and to be honest with you, the only reason I was able to pull it off was because my in-laws invested in my idea. I have this firm, and I've grown it from the bottom to the top. I'm talking, we've made a lot of money, but now I'm realizing my husband's not who he said he was. So now that the firm is making tons of money, he wants to pull the card that says, hey, this is my money too, since my parents are the ones that funded you when you had nothing. Well, you know what my response to this was? And let me just tell you, it's crazy. If there is one thing that life has taught me, it's that nothing lasts forever. I mean, good or bad, I was 16 when I lost both my parents. One day I was dancing on the feet of my father, and my mother laughing and joking that I was too tall to dance on his feet. And the next day I was being called away from school to the hospital. They said it was a drunk driver. The damage to their bodies were so severe that they had no chance but to not make it. My mom was the first to go, while my dad hung on for 4 agonizing hours before joining mom. And just like that, life I knew was gone. My parents were not exactly well-to-do, but they ensured that there was food in my belly, clothing on my back, and love in my heart that I never had to worry about education. The first change that came was being sent to live with Aunt Louise, who made it clear that she was only watching over me till I was 18, right on the clock. She kicks me out of her house the day after my 18th birthday to go make it out on my own, claiming that she had done her family duties and that did not involve sending me to college. Between the two of us, I don't know who was happier to part, never to meet again. After that, I moved back to my parents' house, which thankfully Aunt Louise had not sold, and got a waitressing job and another one cleaning some old lady's house. Once in a while, I took up some laundry jobs, and my father had always been leery of loans, and that weariness easily transferred to me. Rather than taking some college loans that I knew I would spend the rest of my life paying off, I worked, scrimped, and saved until I could send myself to a community college and later to a state university. It was there that I met my husband, Gil. We were both freshmen. Perhaps it was the fact that we were both only children of our parents that we had almost identical childhoods. Or perhaps it was our love for anything Tom Sawyer, but we bonded for the first day that we actually met. We soon started dating right after that, and much to the surprise of our colleagues, we went steady for the whole 4 years in school, never once breaking up or needing space. We continued dating, even after college, and he proposed on our 5th anniversary of being together. We were destined to marry, he said. Corny as it sounded, I believed him. I knew that he really loved me, but I'm not so sure. During our 4th year of being together, just as we graduated from the university, I got this business idea. More than once I had been complicating and, well, I finally received compliments on having a good head for money. Coupled with the degree I had in business admin, I knew that I had found my calling. The only thing that was stopping me was money, so I decided to pitch my business idea to Gil since he came from a wealthy family. He was so excited about the business idea that even though he did not have the funds to invest in it, he promised to speak to his parents, Josh and Jane. Just like he anticipated and hoped for, his parents were willing to invest in my dream to build a wealth management firm. Apparently, they had recently inherited quite a chunk of money, and since it was not being put to use, they decided that investing in my business was a good way to put the money to work. We met to finalize the issues of the ROI. They included with Gil would be getting some of the also position in the company. I drew up the necessary papers and everybody signed them. Life was good. Life became even better when in 2 years I was able to transform what was simply an idea in my mind into a multi-million-dollar firm. Yeah, that's right, multi-million, that ranked within the top 15 in the country. Gil declared that the best thing he ever did was marry a smarty pants like me, while my in-laws exclaimed that giving me the money to start my business was the best decision that they have ever made. And then it started happening. Gil starts asking for money almost every day. It was not his asking that irritated me, but what he was using the said money for. He claims that the start and the success of my business have opened his eyes to see the quickest, easiest, and surest way just to get the rich investing into the projects, as he liked to call them. So he would take my money and throw it to whatever business or scheme or project he believed was going to hit big, all without talking to me. Not to brag or something, but if anyone knew anything about where or when to put the money, it's me, not him. That's literally what my firm is about. Yet he would demand money from me, claiming it was his money and he could do anything with it too. Now here's the crazy part. None of these projects ever yielded a return. They've all crashed and burned, taking his investments with them. You would think that this would wake him up and cause him to seek my advice, but if anything, he got more and more projects, rather than get a good-paying job and carry a share of responsibility for our family. He prefers to toss his and my money down the drain. Well, I've had enough. Yesterday, he came home with another scheme that was guaranteed to make him richer than meet us. As always, he asked that I send him some money. Unlike the previous time I told him no, he was so shocked by my refusal. Probably thought that he was not hearing right because he repeated his request, and I repeated my answer no. I was not going to send him money for this project or any other project because all of the previous ones have been nothing but shams. And he was too pig-headed to consult an expert before throwing his money into everything that glitters. Just like you can imagine, he did not take my response well. He got so angry, he started shouting at the top of his lungs. Then he said something that stops me in the tracks and caused me to come here. He said that my, firm, the one that I built with my sweat and tears, originally belonged to him and that he was going to make sure that I remembered that. What does he mean it belongs to him? He might have forgotten, but everyone knows that this firm is my brainchild. He might have brought the money, but I was the one who built it. He's nothing but an investor. If anyone needs to be remembered, it was him. And what in God's name did he also mean by saying that he was going to make sure I remember it? How? Am I bewildered by the version of Gil that I'm seeing? Where is the man that I married? Update number 1. 2 days later. Guys, I think I woke up in an alternate universe because tell me why my husband and his family are suddenly behaving like someone just took their personalities. After their argument between Gil and me 2 days ago, things have been quite tense between the two of us. He refuses to speak to me and has started coming really late home. I chalked it up to him acting like a petulant child, expecting that he would soon come to his senses. I mean, I am the one holding most, if not all, of the cards here. Without me, there would be no firm. Without the firm, there would be no money to throw around. Plus, as the highest shareholder, I could decide to sell off the firm. If there was anyone who would be giving an attitude, it should be me. Anyways, I was determined to focus on my business and let Gil run out of steam, only to wake up this morning to a text from my in-laws. They were demanding 70% of the firm's earnings, not just for this year, but for as long as the firm would be in operation. A whopping 70%, guys. According to their text, they suddenly realized that they deserved more than I was giving to them, because without them, the firm would not be in existence. As if they had been the only ones who were rich enough to invest in my business. If I had a solid business plan, and even without it, I could have gotten investors who would have been willing to work with me and who obviously would not be stressing me as they were doing right now. Perhaps this was my mistake in the first place. Everybody knows that business and family do not always mix. Just look at the Gucci family. I decided to ignore the message and head into my day like the message did not exist. Guess who I met once I got to the time to arrive to work? Josh and Jane are sitting in my office as if they owned the firm. With everything that was going on, I would not be surprised if they were already thinking of how to own the firm. They asked if I had seen their message, and I told them that there was nothing to discuss because the answer was no. And just like that, a shouting match ensued. They called me selfish and a cheater and every ugly name that you could actually think of. While I shouted to get them to stop shouting, finally they stormed out of the office, claiming that I would hear from their lawyer soon. I collapsed into my chair, trying to wrap my mind around what just happened. It's been many hours since then, and I'm trying still to figure out what exactly has gotten into Gil, Josh, and Jane. Why this sudden desperate need for greed? Where did it come from? Or had it always been there and I was just blind to it? It's obvious more now than ever that pitching my business to Gil was the greatest mistake I've ever made. No, the mistake started with dating him. Goodness, how am I going to get myself out of this? Update number 2, 2 days later. Guys, I'm convinced that I married into a family of jokers. There's no other explanation for this madness. Either that or my life has suddenly become a comedy skit. Just like Josh and Jane promised, I did hear from their lawyer. Sent to my mail from their lawyer, someone named Will Ferrell, was a cease and desist letter. The letter demanded in bold legible letters that I immediately cease and desist from any involvement in the management, operation, and decision-making process of the firm. Now, this is the part that made me laugh, or rather, the first thing that made me laugh. The letter listed Josh and Jane as the owners of the firm, and I was to return all business-related documents and properties to them. What is that saying about being careful of what you imagine? To think that I had just written that I would not be surprised to find out that they were planning to take the firm from me. Contrary to what I thought, I was surprised, especially when I got to the next paragraph. That was the second thing that almost had me spitting out my coffee. In that paragraph, it started with concerns having been raised regarding my mental stability and capacity to manage the firm's business. Apparently, my in-laws are trying to sell a story that I'm mentally unstable. Unfortunately for them, I have resources to not only get them, but also make sure that they pay for what they're trying to do. After all, one of the guiding principles of my life is that what goes around must come around. To them, I'm just gullible, naive of a girl whom they can bully to do their bidding. Well, they'll be soon surprised to find out that I have a spine. You know, the first thing I plan on doing is to pay their lawyer a visit. Mr. Will is either a very gullible person who believed their words, and whatever documents they provided him, it's just a hook, line, and sinker, without bothering to make a proper investigation, or he was as crooked as Josh and Jane. Finding out which side he was on, either the laws or my in-laws, will determine the next step that I'll take. What I'm not sure of is whether Gil is in on this scheme to oust me from the firm. Up until now, he still refuses to talk to me, and for the past 2 days, he's been sleeping in the guest room. I was as good of a stranger to him, or more accurately, I was the enemy, because I would no longer support his reckless spending. Let's also not forget his promise to make me remember that the firm belonged to him. It hurts to suspect him. The part of my heart that's still in love with him revolts at the thought that he could be involved. But the events of the past few days have shown that there's a part of Gil that I do not know. A part that's selfish and reckless, and we all know that anyone selfish will always do whatever it takes to keep what he thinks is his. I don't like suspecting him, but it's not like I can just up and ask him where his loyalties lie, with me or his parents. Or can I? Update number 3. A day later. Hey everyone, finally things are beginning to look up. This morning I went to see Will, and as it turns out, he had been fooled by Jane's tears, so he did not bother with investigating their claims. In a way, it's understandable that he would believe them, because who lied to their lawyer? You could lie to the cops, but your lawyer is meant to be the person you need not to hide anything from so that he can argue the best case for you. Unfortunately for him, Josh and Jane were as crooked as a gnarled tree. There was nothing straight about him. When I introduced myself to him, it was obvious that he was surprised. I looked nothing like mentally unstable. Josh and Jane had painted me to be. Obviously because I wasn't mentally unstable, duh, but he didn't know this. So I told him that Josh and Jane lied to him, that I was neither crazy nor were the owners of the firm. He asked if I had proof to back up my claim, and I showed him 3 medical reports that attested to my mental stability and capacity, as well as the testimonies of past clients. I told him that he could check each one out to prove their authenticity. And just so he can see it, I asked him to show me the medical report Josh and Jane showed him that convinced him enough to write a cease and desist letter. When I saw the report, I had to admit that it was almost authentic-looking forgery. I asked him if he had checked out the report, and he got all red in the face. He told me that Josh and Jane had been pretty convincing, after experiencing what I did these past few days. I didn't, at first, think hard to believe, but a few phone calls later, Will folded his arms and asked me why my parent-in-laws wanted to oust me from the firm. I told him everything, and he told me that he wanted to help me expose their lies. I asked him, well, why the sudden interest, buddy? He could just withdraw his legal counsel and go about his own business, but he explained that their lies could have ruined his career. I imagine that being known as the lawyer who used forgery for evidence would not endear him to the future clients. So since I was not one to look a gift horse in the mouth, I accepted his help. He asked if I had documents outlining the terms and conditions of their investment, and I told him, oh, I could do you one better, buddy. Unknown to both Gil and his parents, every time we met to discuss my business idea, the terms and conditions of the investment, and ROI, I was always wearing a wire. The semi-invisible type, which looked like a headset and was connected to a recorder. It had been gifted from a friend after being taught by my father to always plan for every contingency. I made sure I never went to a business meeting without it. At that time, it wasn't just in case an argument came up, or in case we needed to remember an exact word thing. I just never knew that I would have to be using it to fend off greedy in-laws who would want to steal the business from under me, but I'm never more glad than now that I have this. Update number 4, 2 days later. Hey guys, Gil and his crazy family are not even out of my life or the firm, but they are never going to torment me again. The next day after seeing Will, we went to the cops, and the evidence Will and I brought forth was solid enough to get a warrant for their arrest. So I called a meeting this morning and invited Gil, Josh, and Jane, knowing that they might refuse to attend. I told them that I had, well, seen the errors of my way finally, and I would like to apologize and make things right. The three of them assembled at my firm faster than I could say. Robinson Crusoe. I could literally see the smugness on each of their face, and Gil obviously thinking that his silent treatment was finally getting to me, and Josh and Jane thinking that their bullying tactics have finally convinced me to do their bidding. Smiling, I stood up and went all, I'm sorry that it took this long, but you have been found out, and will be going to jail for forgery and financial fraud. Just then they started spluttering and blustering, calling me a liar. If I was ever in doubt of whether Gil was in on his parents' plans to steal the firm from me, well, his reaction to my news put that to rest. Immediately after I finished speaking, he jumped up and screamed that if there was anybody who should be taken for fraud, it should be me, because his parents built the firm with their hard-earned money and I was refusing to give them what was rightfully due. He claimed that they all deserved more than the peanuts I handed out, but instead of doing what was right, I've chosen to shut the firms purposely and get their face out of here. I looked into their faces, twisted with greed and hatred, and told them that it seemed like they had suddenly forgotten our initial agreement. I went on to tell them that in case they might want to claim that I tricked them into signing the document, I have audio recordings to back up the written agreement. At that, Josh became so red in the face and was like I would hear from their lawyer. Just then, Will entered the office and said that they would have to look for another lawyer because he was now representing me. On his heels entered the police, who after reading them their rights, handed them and dragged them their little conniving butts off to jail. Yeah, out of my firm, out of my life, and just before Gil was dragged completely out of my firm, I told him to expect divorce papers, buddy. Perhaps once upon a time he loved me, but that time was gone and that life is gone. The Gil before me has become a monster. I could not and will not allow him to just destroy me for his own gain. After they were dragged out, I collapsed in my chair, a little drained but full of relief. If I had allowed them to bully me to do their bidding or in a bid to placate my so-called family, it would have only been a little time before they completely destroyed me and the firm. Because with the level of their greed, they would not stop until they've spent every penny of the firm's money. And then who would be left to pick up the shrubble? Definitely me. But let me know, guys, what would you have done if you found yourself in my position?